of silence, particularly for Sharon Lawrence's mother, Doreen Blashinsky, who passed away last evening. Thank you. All right, roll call, please.
Mr. Haas.
Here.
Ms. Krishnowski. Here. Mr. Lescavage.
Here.
Ms. McDermott. Here. Mr. Perry. Here. Mr. Sabatino.
Here.
Ms. Smith. Ms. Stevenson. Here. Mr. Thornton.
Here.
Mr. Wilovich.
Here.
Mr. Lombardo.
Here.
10 of 11.
Thank you. We'll now have public comment on the proposed ordinance adopting the 2025 fiscal year budget for Luzerne County. Is there any public comment on the adoption of the budget? Anybody on the Zoom? Nobody? All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. First public hearing is adjourned. It's 5:55, so I'd like to call the second public hearing to order. We've already had the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. Roll call, please, Ms. Lawrence.
Mr. Haas.
Here.
Ms. Krishnowski. Here. Mr. Lescavage.
Here.
Ms. McDermott.
Here.
Mr. Perry. Here. Mr. Sabatino.
Here.
Ms. Smith. Ms. Stevenson.
Here.
Mr. Thornton.
Here.
Mr. Wilovich.
Here.
Mr. Lombardo.
Here.
10 of 11.
Thank you. We'll now have public comment on the proposed ordinance amending the 2024 fiscal year budget for Luzerne County for MHDS. Is there any public comment? Anybody on the Zoom? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, second public hearing is adjourned. We'll restart at 6:01 p.m. Thank you very much. All right, everybody, it's 6:01 p.m. I'd like to call the voting session to order. We already had the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. Roll call, please, Ms. Lawrence.
Mr. Haas.
Here.
Ms. Krishnowski. Here. Mr. Liscavige. Here. Ms. McDermott. Here. Mr. Perry. Here. Mr. Sabatino.
Here.
Ms. Smith. Ms. Stevenson. Here. Mr. Thornton.
Here.
Mr. Wilovich.
Here.
Mr. Lombardo.
Here.
10 of 11.
Okay, we do have one ceremonial proclamation for Private Steve Giza, who was honored at the Veterans Brunch from the District Attorney's Office this past Sunday. Whereas Luzerne County Council recognizes and deeply appreciates the sacrifices and contributions of our veterans, and we gather today to honor the life and legacy of Private Steve Giza, a dedicated soldier, community leader, and beloved citizen of Luzerne County who passed away on July 7, 2023 at the age of 84. And whereas Private Steve Giza answered the call of duty by proudly serving in the United States Army during a time of great need, reporting to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and demonstrating exceptional discipline, courage, and loyalty to his country, earning an honorable discharge in 1967. And whereas after his military service, Private Giza returned to Wilkes-Barre, where his sense of duty extended to his community, resuming his career as a journeyman, and later as a press foreman for the Sunday Independent and the Citizen's Voice, embodying the values of hard work and integrity that defined his character. And whereas Private Giza continued his legacy of service off the battlefield by investing his time and energy into the lives of others. He coached young athletes in the Kingston Girls Softball League, mentored generations through his passion for sports, and supported his community with steadfast dedication as an executive team member of Teamsters GCIU Local 137C. And whereas Private Giza was a proud and loyal American, a patriot who cherished the principles of freedom and opportunity he defended during his time in uniform. He brought honor to his country not only through his military service, but also through his lifelong contributions to Luzerne County. And whereas Private Giza exemplifies the values of the greatest generation: humility, selflessness, and resilience. Whether cheering on the Wyoming Valley Clutch basketball team, reminiscing with his classmates, or performing his artistry and storytelling, he enriched the lives of all who knew him. Now, therefore, we, the Luzerne County Council, formally recognize and celebrate the life of Private Steve Giza, a distinguished veteran and cherished member of the community, for his unwavering service to his country and his enduring contributions to Luzerne County. His life of service, dedication, and patriotism will forever inspire the citizens of this county. All right, thank you very much. Are there any deletions from the voting session agenda? Hearing none, is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The agenda is adopted. We'll now have public comment on voting session agenda items only. We have a couple of slips up here. We only have one slip up here. Mr. Griffith?
Good evening, Council. My deepest sympathies to Ms. Lawrence in passing of her mom. My agenda item I'd like to speak about is item number one. First one is the modification for the American Rescue Plan. I think that's a worthwhile thing. We should take that money back and use it for another project that we could possibly use for in the county. I think we should also look at the other part of that funding, which was for the hotel project that was going to happen on that corner as well. And just double check and see where the funding is on that, and possibly we could get some other funding back into the ARPA fund and use for other items before we end up paying that money back as well. The other item I wanted to speak about is item 17, is the motion to approve the settlement for pending litigation. I think it's time that WellPath be held accountable and not the county be bailing them out all the time. It's time that WellPath be responsible. I don't think the county should be involved in that at all. And the last item I want to talk about is number 22, is the motion for adoption for the memo of understanding for the clerk to council. I did mention this before, and this has nothing to do with that motion, but I think we should amend that memo of understanding to include the IT department and the sheriffs, because this government study commission has approved a memo of understanding to pay the clerk, but not to pay anybody else. They're going out and spending money for attorneys in their government study commission at the clip of $200 a trip. So those attorneys are coming here $200 every time they come in the car to come here. The government study commission has no problem paying that kind of fee, but we won't consider the fact that we have our IT people who are already stretched to the breaking point in this county, doing the work that they do every day, to add another task onto them for an evening session and not even consider paying those people. I think that's not fair to the IT people, the sheriff as well. So if this council doesn't want to approve the IT people to be paid or the sheriff, then just instruct them not to perform the duties for the Government Study Commission. The Government Study Commission is a separate entity. They have absolutely nothing to do with this county. They are independent, and they made that very clear when they challenged this budget process that we did, when they asked for checks, separate checking accounts, and all of that. So if they want to be separate, let's make them separate. So let's not provide them the space. Let's not provide them IT support. Let's not provide them security. Let them get their own security. Let them get their own IT people, and let them put it up on YouTube like everybody else that has to, that doesn't have a professional IT department. But the ability for us to use our staff on an evening shift and then stretch them out the next day to do work for the county is just not fair. We should compensate those people accordingly, just like they want to compensate the clerk. They should compensate IT as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Griffith. Anybody else for public comment in the audience? Mr. Walsh?
Jamie Walsh, Ross Township. I just had a question on number 9, 10, 11, and 12. The purchase agreement, can you explain what these are for Union Township? I mean, I'm reading the little clip here, but can you explain what the whole program?
Manager Crocomo, do you want to take that?
Yes, is Nick Vogue in the audience? I believe he was dealing with that.
Okay. Do you have any other comments, Mr. Walsh, before they answer your question?
No,
So we don't take up your time? Okay.
I don't.
All right. Okay.
So ask Nick about
Well,
it.
he's right behind you.
Oh.
We'll
Yeah.
have him. He can explain it if you'd like
he's
right
behind
now.
me. I didn't know you were there, Nick. Sorry.
Sure. Go ahead, Mr. Vogue. Thank you.
Yeah,
These are the 4 items for Union Township, correct?
yes. For right of way, we're fixing 4 bridges in Union Township that are county owned. For this process, we need some land that is owned by private homeowners for development for the project, for equipment, staging area, and part of the land will be used for part of the project. They need to staging and right of way for it's in the right of way for the project, so that's pretty much it. Yes.
I think that all of them are listed in the agenda, the names and the areas where they're going to be utilizing the land.
And just as a side note, this is not uncommon when you're doing bridge or road projects. So, and in order to get those accomplished, we have to go through this process.
Thank you, Mr. Vogue and Manager Crocomo. Anybody else in the audience for public comment? All right, we have one hand up on the Zoom. RK, please state your name and municipality.
Ron Knapp from Nanticoke, Pennsylvania.
Go ahead, Mr. Knapp.
I concur with Walter Griffith. I wanted to mention that the IT department is working for the Government Study Commission, and one of the personnel was, in fact, working with Zooming in Mr. Khan, the solicitor for that meeting. They are on duty. If they're working the over 40 hours, there shouldn't be a special payment for the county clerk or clerk of commission. Also, the sheriff's on duty, or if they're working for the commission, there should be allocation of, they should be paid for that through the county. The county asked for Government Study Commission, and they should be compensated. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Knapp. Anybody else for public comment? All right, hearing none, we'll move on. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the November 8th, 2024 emergency voting session?
Motion. Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes from the emergency voting session are approved.
Abstain, Mr. Chair. I wasn't present.
Oh, okay. Thank you. All right, next we'll have a motion to approve the minutes of the November 12th, 2024 voting session.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Minutes are approved from November 12th, 2024 voting session. Moving on to our agenda items. Number 1, motion to adopt the ordinance amending the 2024 fiscal year budget for Luzerne County for the MHDS grant.
Second.
Motion and a second. On the question, anybody? Roll call, Ms. Lawrence?
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Ms. Krishnowski? Yes. Mr. Liscavige? Yes. Ms. McDermott?
Yes.
Mr. Perry? Mr. Sabatino?
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mr. Thornton?
Yes.
Mr. Wilovich?
Yes.
Mr. Lombardo?
Yes.
Do you want me to include?
After this vote is over, I'd like to recognize that
Okay.
Ms. Smith has arrived.
The current vote is 10-0 unanimous.
Okay, thank you. And just as a point of order, I'd like to recognize that Ms. Smith has arrived for the meeting. Okay. Number 2, motion to adopt the resolution approving a modification to an American Rescue Plan Act funds awarded project for the City of Wilkes-Barre Industrial Development Authority.
So moved. Second.
There's a motion and a second. Ms. Sparich, would you like to opine on this?
At about 4 o'clock today, I
Is that mic on? I don't think the mic's on.
I wanted to let everybody know at about 4 o'clock today, I heard from Mr. Newman, and he emailed a letter saying that they were not going to be able to use the money. So I believe Sharon was kind enough to make copies for everybody. So that's why Mr. Newman isn't here.
Right. And so basically the letter says that they haven't gotten any firm commitments outside of the money that we've allocated towards them. They remain hopeful, this, that, the other thing, but that they don't have any firm commitments. And, we put this date as the date that we were going to claw back the money. So that's what this resolution does.
And
All right.
Mr. Chair, I just want to add, that money, $2 million, I believe it was,
Yes.
will be coming back to the county.
And he didn't take an advance, so we have it, but yes. Yeah.
So we could use for our other county internal
Correct.
projects.
So after the meeting, if the resolution passes and we deobligate those funds, he'll do the necessary paperwork, with Booth to get it
Great.
all taken care of.
Thank you. All right. There's a motion and a second. Roll call.
Ms. Krishnowski? Yes. Mr. Liscavige?
Yes.
Ms. McDermott?
Yes.
Mr. Perry? Mr. Sabatino?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mr. Thornton?
Yes.
Mr. Wilovich?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
And Mr. Lombardo?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Number 3, motion to adopt the resolution approving a modification to an American Rescue Plan Act funds awarded project for building and grounds operations number 1.
Motion.
There's a motion and a second. Roll call.
Mr. Liscavige?
Yes.
Ms. McDermott?
Yes.
Mr. Perry? Mr. Sabatino?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mr. Thornton?
Yes.
Mr. Wilovich?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Krishnowski? Yes. Mr. Lombardo?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Number 4, motion to adopt the resolution approving a modification to an American Rescue Plan Act funds awarded project for the Cunningham Valley Civic Organization.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Roll call.
Ms. McDermott?
Yes.
Mr. Perry? Mr. Sabatino?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mr. Thornton?
Yes.
Mr. Wilovich?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Krishnowski? Yes. Mr. Liscavige? Yes. Mr. Lombardo?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Number 5, motion to adopt the resolution approving a modification to an American Rescue Plan Act funds awarded project for Luzerne County Emergency Management Agency.
Motion. Second.
All right. There's a motion and a second. Roll call.
Mr. Perry? Mr. Sabatino?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mr. Thornton?
Yes.
Mr. Wilovich?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Krishnowski? Yes. Mr. Liscavige? Yes. Ms. McDermott?
Yes.
Mr. Lombardo?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Number 6, motion to adopt a resolution approving a modification to an American Rescue Plan Act funds awarded project for the Jewish Community Alliance of Northeastern Pennsylvania.
So moved.
There's a motion and a second. Ms. Sparich?
I just wanted to let you know they're not giving back another $900,000. This is just the paperwork to correct everything in the files from the previous meeting that we had.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions? Roll call.
Mr. Sabatino?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mr. Thornton?
Yes.
Mr. Wilovich.
Yes.
Mr. Haas.
Yes.
Ms. Krasnowski.
Yes.
Mr. Liscavige.
Yes.
Ms. McDermott.
Yes.
Mr. Perry. Mr. Lombardo.
Yes.
Unanimous.
Number 7, motion to adopt the resolution approving a modification to an American Rescue Plan Act funds awarded project for NEPA inclusive.
Motion.
There's a motion and a second. Roll call.
Ms. Smith.
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson.
Yes.
Mr. Thornton.
Yes.
Mr. Mr. Wilovich.
Yes.
Mr. Haas.
Yes.
Ms. Krasnowski.
Yes.
Mr. Liscavige.
Yes.
Ms. McDermott.
Yes.
Mr. Perry. Mr. Sabatino.
Yes.
Mr. Lombardo.
Yes.
Unanimous.
Number 8, motion to adopt the whoever has their microphone on, can you please mute it? Okay. Number 8, motion to adopt the resolution approving a modification to an American Rescue Plan Act funds awarded project for the Greater Piston Ambulance and Emergency Operations Center. Are we okay now? I think we are. Okay. Is there motion?
Second.
Motion and a second? Roll call?
Ms. Stevenson.
Yes.
Mr. Thornton.
Yes.
Mr. Wilovich.
Yes.
Mr. Haas.
Yes.
Ms. Krasnowski.
Yes.
Mr. Liscavige.
Yes.
Ms. McDermott.
Yes.
Mr. Perry. Mr. Sabatino.
Yes.
Ms. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Lombardo.
I abstain. I'm a member of that organization.
10 yes with 1 abstention.
All right, thank you. Number 9, motion to adopt the resolution approving a modification to an American Rescue Plan Act funds awarded project for the Swoyersville Parks and Recreation Board.
So moved.
Second.
All right, there is a motion and a second. Roll call?
Mr. Thornton.
Yes.
Mr. Wilovich.
Yes.
Mr. Haas.
Yes.
Ms. Krasnowski.
Yes.
Mr. Liscavige.
Yes.
Ms. McDermott.
Yes.
Mr. Perry. Mr. Sabatino.
Yes.
Ms. Smith.
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson.
Yes.
Mr. Lombardo.
Yes.
Unanimous.
Number 10, motion to adopt the resolution approving the purchase agreement for real property in Union Township from Alexander B. Blydenberg and Kim Marie Blydenberg in lieu of condemnation.
So moved.
There's a motion and a second. Roll call?
Mr. Wilovich.
Yes.
Mr. Haas.
Yes.
Ms. Krasnowski.
Yes.
Mr. Liscavige.
Yes.
Ms. McDermott.
Yes.
Mr. Perry. Mr. Sabatino.
Yes.
Ms. Smith.
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson.
Yes.
Mr. Thornton.
Yes.
Mr. Lombardo.
Yes.
Unanimous.
Number 11, motion to adopt the resolution approving the purchase agreement for real property in Union Township from Mason Peters in lieu of condemnation.
So moved. Second.
There's a motion and a second. Roll call?
Mr. Haas.
Yes.
Ms. Krasnowski.
Yes.
Mr. Liscavige.
Yes.
Ms. McDermott.
Yes.
Mr. Perry. Mr. Sabatino.
Yes.
Ms. Smith.
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson.
Yes.
Mr. Thornton.
Yes.
Mr. Wilovich.
Yes.
Mr. Lombardo.
Yes.
Unanimous.
Number 12, motion to adopt the resolution approving the purchase agreement of real property in Union Township from Joseph Jarowitz. Oh gosh, Polish name. Jarosowicz, Jarosevich, James Jarosevich, and Susan Keefe in lieu of condemnation. So
Motion.
sorry.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call.
Ms. Krasnowski.
Yes.
Mr. Liscavige.
Yes.
Ms. McDermott.
Yes.
Mr. Perry. Mr. Sabatino.
Yes.
Ms. Smith.
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson.
Yes.
Mr. Thornton.
Yes.
Mr. Wilovich.
Yes.
Mr. Haas.
Yes.
Mr. Lombardo.
Yes.
Unanimous.
Number 13, motion to adopt the resolution approving the purchase agreement of real property in Union Township from Susan Keefe in lieu of condemnation.
So moved. Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Liscavige.
Yes.
Ms. McDermott.
Yes.
Mr. Perry. Mr. Sabatino.
Yes.
Ms. Smith.
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson.
Yes.
Mr. Thornton.
Yes.
Mr. Wilovich.
Yes.
Mr. Haas.
Yes.
Ms. Krasnowski.
Yes.
Mr. Lombardo.
Yes.
Unanimous.
Number 14, motion to adopt the resolution authorizing the county manager to execute a contract with Trinity Services Group for inmate meals and kitchen operations management.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Roll call.
Ms. McDermott.
Yes.
Mr. Perry. Mr. Sabatino.
Yes.
Ms. Smith.
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson.
Yes.
Mr. Thornton.
Yes.
Mr. Wilovich.
Yes.
Mr. Haas.
Yes.
Ms. Krasnowski.
Yes.
Mr. Liscavige.
Yes.
Mr. Lombardo.
Yes.
Unanimous.
Number 15, introduction of ordinance amending the 2024 fiscal year budget for Luzerne County for the public defender. Manager Crocomo.
Good evening. This is a grant that we received from the governor for public defenders. All the public defender offices in the Commonwealth received monies, and this is the allocation.
Any questions for Manager Crocomo? All right, thank you very much. Number 16, motion to adopt the resolution amending the master grant agreement between Luzerne County Planning and Zoning Agreement, acting on behalf of the Lackawanna Luzerne Transportation Study Metropolitan Planning Organization and the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation.
So moved.
There's a motion and a second. Roll call.
Mr. Perry? Mr. Sabatino?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mr. Thornton?
Yes.
Mr. Wilovich?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Krishnowski?
Yes.
Mr. Liscavige?
Yes.
Ms. McDermott?
Yes.
Mr. Lombardo?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Number 17, motion to adopt the resolution approving an agreement with Newport Township for the collection of Newport Township taxes by Luzerne County Treasurer's Office.
So moved. Second.
There's a motion and a second. Roll call.
Mr. Sabatino?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mr. Thornton?
Yes.
Mr. Wilovich?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Krishnowski?
Yes.
Mr. Liscavige?
Yes.
Ms. McDermott?
Yes.
Mr. Perry? Mr. Lombardo?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Number 18, motion to adopt the resolution approving the settlement of pending litigation in the matter of Holly Baldwin, acting as administratrix of the estate of Mercedes L. Alimo versus Luzerne County and Wellpath LLC. Is there a motion?
So move.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Roll call.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mr. Thornton?
Yes.
Mr. Wilovich?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Krishnowski?
Yes.
Mr. Liscavige?
No.
Ms. McDermott?
No.
Mr. Perry? Mr. Sabatino?
Yes.
Mr. Lombardo?
Yes.
We have 9 yes and 2 no. It passes.
Number 19, introduction of ordinance amending the 2024 fiscal year budget for Luzerne County to account for budget transfers to the Office of Law Budget. Up. It's an automatic introduction for Manager Crocomo. That's okay.
Yes, it is, but I would like to amend it, given that the settlement for the Mercedes Aliamo case was approved. I'd like to amend that to $750,000.
Okay.
It has to get introduced first.
All right. So it's introduced. Do we make that amendment now, or will we make it at the next meeting?
I can make it at the next meeting.
Okay.
Since it's auto-introduced,
Okay, got it.
when you guys go to vote on it, though, you'll have to vote on the approved amount.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. Any questions on that? All right, thank you. Number 20, motion to adopt the resolution approving the initiation of condemnation proceedings against Midway Center LLC.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Roll call.
Ms. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mr. Thornton?
Yes.
Mr. Wilovich?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Krishnowski?
Yes.
Mr. Liscavige?
Yes.
Ms. McDermott?
Yes.
Mr. Perry? Mr. Sabatino?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Lombardo?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Number 21, motion to adopt the resolution rescinding the temporary open burn ban.
Second, Mr. Chair.
There's a motion and a second. Roll call.
Mr. Thornton?
Yes.
Mr. Wilovich?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Krishnowski?
Yes.
Mr. Liscavige?
Yes.
Ms. McDermott?
Yes.
Mr. Perry? Mr. Sabatino?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mr. Lombardo?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Number 22, motion to adopt the resolution authorizing the county manager to execute an agreement of sale, etc., for a parcel of county-owned property located in Dallas Township to Martin Carr.
So moved.
There's a motion and a second. Roll call.
Mr. Wilovich?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Krishnowski?
Yes.
Mr. Liscavige?
Yes.
Ms. McDermott?
Yes.
Mr. Perry? Mr. Sabatino?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mr. Thornton?
Yes.
Mr. Lombardo?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Number 23, motion to adopt the resolution approving a memorandum of understanding with Luzerne County Government Study Commission for the compensation of the clerk of county council for services provided to the Government Study Commission.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead. Mr.
Thank
Thornton.
you, Mr. Chair. I'm definitely in support of this motion. However, I agree with the county controller, Mr. Griffith, that in order to keep the budget correct with the Government Study Commission, they should be showing through invoices and through payment of checks from that commission back to the county for all of the services or employees that they're using for the county. So this is good that we have this on the agenda tonight. This will clear up their use of the clerk of council for their use at their meetings, and that will show in the budget. So everything will be clear, let's say a year or two from now, and somebody goes back and asks, what did it actually cost the county, or what did it cost the Government Study Commission to do all of their work when they sat here for a year, year and a half, or whatever it was. And right now, I believe there should be a memorandum of understanding for our IT people. Because as I heard through the grapevine, I don't know if it's true, we're giving IT people some comp time off, which some IT people don't necessarily want. They'd rather get paid. And when we give comp time off with IT people, they're allowed to come in late the next day, a couple hours, because they put their time in the evening before on the Government Study Commission meeting. And that shortchanges or hands our IT department for our county services. So it creates issues, it creates problems. So for the same reasons that we're doing this for the clerk of council, we should be doing the exact same thing for the IT people and the sheriff deputies that are also over there. So I don't know if we're invoicing the Government Study Commission for the services of our employees. If we're not, we should start. And I think it would clear up and clarify their budget completely by the end of the whole process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thornton. Any other comments? All right, there's a motion and a second. Roll call.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Ms. Krishnowski? Yes. Mr. Liscavige? Yes. Ms. McDermott?
Yes.
Mr. Perry? Mr. Sabatino?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mr. Thornton?
Yes.
Mr. Wilovich?
Yes.
Mr. Lombardo?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Okay, number 24, we have a budget amendment. And the amendment is for, it is moving from the line item of the reserve fund, $2,000 to the county council meetings and conferences budget. It's moving, turning that from $0 to $2,000.
Yeah, I'll move that, Mr. Chair, if I could.
Okay, there's a motion.
Second.
There's a second.
And if I could just speak on it too, Mr.
Go
Chair.
ahead.
So
Yep.
essentially, everybody, so that's for the CCAP quarterly meetings they have throughout the year. I've attended in the past, and I have time to do it this year. I'd like to personally go, but I think registration is about $400 or so. So if any other council members would be interested in attending in the summer conference, about 3 to 4 days. They also have periodic ones throughout the other seasons that are not as long, but I always found a lot of value in them. Helped me be a better council person, and saved us some money too in the long run. So that's the rationale, Mr. Chair. Thanks for the consideration, everybody.
All right. Any other questions? Roll call.
Ms. Krishnowski? Yes. Mr. Liscavige? Yes. Ms. McDermott?
Yes.
Mr. Perry? Mr. Sabatino?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mr. Thornton?
Yes.
Mr. Wilovich?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Mr. Lombardo?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Thank you. And just to add one thing I forgot to mention, the new total for the reserve fund will be $237,691.
Just to clarify also, we voted on the expense and revenues?
Yes.
With this vote?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. We'll now have public comment on non-agenda items. Is there anybody for public comment? Mr. Griffith, you had your thing checked.
The vote that was just taken on item number 23 for the member of understanding was not, we didn't really put a really fine point on how we're going to handle this IT issue. I would strongly urge the county manager to send a directive to the County Government Study Commission that if they do not approve the ability for them to authorize payment for those IT people or the sheriff, that we stop providing that service. I think that's the right thing to do, and as to Mr. Thornton's point, if we don't track it correctly, we're not going to be able to give them an accurate cost analysis at the end of their study. So I think it's really important, if they're using our services, that they authorize payment for those people and they get a physical check from the county for their services, just like we would with the sheriff or with the clerk. So we could track their expenses as well as make sure that the IT people are treated as fairly as possible. So I would strongly urge the administration to tell the Government Study Commission, if they're not interested in compensating our staff for their time providing that service, that we don't provide the service. Let them figure it out on their own. That's just the way things have to be. My other public comment is on the work session we have coming up. We want to talk about the LEO officers for the work session. Item number 2 for your consideration. And one of the problems that I have with the LEO officer program that I forwarded to council on many occasions is Lackawanna County doesn't want to pony up their fair share. And I don't think it's fair. It's a bi-county board. It's a bi-county airport. I think they should pony up their fair share to offset the cost of those LEO officers. And if they don't, then we shouldn't be providing it. Let them go back the way it used to be. Let the Avoca Police Department come. When they have an issue with somebody that needs to be arrested, they can call the local police department to come and arrest those folks. We're providing a valuable service to them. And I think that Lackawanna County should pony up their fair share so we don't have to pony up all of it. And I know the airport's given $60,000 towards it, which is very helpful based on the issues that Ms. McDermott brought up as well as the county manager. But Lackawanna County refuses to pony up. So I don't think if they're not going to put up their fair share, we should just abolish the program and let the airport figure it out. And the last item on my agenda for discussion is the Election Inquiry Committee discussion. If you do impanel an inquiry committee, I would hope you would consider having the ability to put the Controller's Office as part of that commission, because we really would like to be involved in that. So consider that. I think it's a worthwhile committee to form, only so we can make things better. We need to get lessons learned. I know the Election Bureau had yeoman's task there. It's a lot of work. This election was monumental, and I'm sure there's things we can learn from it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Griffith. Anybody else for public comment in the audience? Mr. Grantede?
Joe Grantede, Plains Township. I just wanted to ask a question about the grant to the district attorney's office. Is that a one-time grant? And if it is that going toward any permanent expenses?
Are you referring to the grant for the public defender's office?
Yeah.
Mr. Yeager, would you like to answer that question? Is that all the only question you have?
Yeah, that's all.
Mr. Grantede? Okay. Thank you.
The monies that the governor allocated to the public defender's office are for retention, bonuses, support staff. It is not meant to supplement or add to the county's obligation to fund our officers through our budget. So it won't be going for paper products, pencils, stuff like that. It goes to staff.
Thank you, Mr. Yeager.
Thank you. Not towards hiring. Unfortunately, our hires are union. They have a contract with the council, and that's what determines their pay.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other public comment? Members of the audience? Anybody on the Zoom? Mr. Knapp, do you have public comment?
Thank you, Chair Lombardo. Resolution 23 is accurate, and the decisions you made, it was very smart. And Vice Chair Thornton, thank you for duly mentioning the necessity to keep everything line item for line item for the budget and what it's going to cost the Government Study Commission. Secondly, I just wanted to thank Manager Crocomo. Is my understanding that she put up all the resources for the Christmas tree in the Rotunda. It is quite the beautiful display. And correct me if I'm wrong, she did put her own resources into decorate the rotunda. Is that correct, Chairman Lombardo?
I believe that is correct. She's done that in the past, and I believe she did that again this year.
Okay, well, she deserves a kudos from Luzerne County citizens for doing that for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Knapp. Anybody else for public comment? Is there a motion to adjourn? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting's adjourned. We'll restart at 6:45 with the work session. All right, council members, at 6:45, please take your seats. We're going to get started with the work session momentarily. All right, everybody, please take your seats.
Yeah. We need our solicitor here.
All right, yeah. Please take your seats. Sorry, wasn't trying to yell. 6:30. Yes, 6:33. Oh, 6:36. All right, thank you very much. It's 6:47 p.m. I'd like to call this work session to order. We had the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence already. Roll call, please, Ms. Lawrence.
Mr. Hawes?
Here.
Ms. Krishnowski? Here. Mr. Liscavige? Here. Ms. McDermott?
Here.
Mr. Perry? Mr. Sabatino?
Here.
Ms. Smith?
Here.
Ms. Stevenson?
Here.
Mr. Thornton?
Here.
Mr. Wilovich?
Here.
Mr. Lombardo?
Here.
11 of 11.
Thank you. Any additions or deletions from the work session agenda?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
thank you. I'd like to make a motion to delete item number 4 regarding the zoning, the parcel of property, the agricultural district zone as per the request of planning and zoning.
There a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Number 4 is deleted. Any other additions or deletions? Is there a motion to adopt the amended agenda?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The agenda is adopted. We'll start off with budget reports for October 2024. Ms. Roselle?
Sorry. Good evening. We'll review the budget reports for October. The first revenue report, is the revenue report. Revenue earned is at 90% of budget, or $152,144,834. Tax collections are at 96% of budget, or $119,144,167. Our expenses are at 62% of budget, or $102,686,60. Next is your treasurer's report, showing a cash balance of $173,353,399 at the end of October. The cash balance at the end of August was $183 million, so we had some ARPA payments that we made this month. The interest earned for the month of October is $362,000. Of that, the ARPA interest is $213,753. Year-to-date total interest that we've earned is $4.6 million. The ARPA cash balance is still sitting at $51,366,072. Our ARPA interest that we've earned year-to-date is $2,801,849. And the total that we've earned in ARPA interest since inception is $7.2 million. The next report is your listing of budget transfers, followed by your accounts payable report, which shows the detail of the $102,686,000 through October. running slightly below last year at 106.4 million. And then I just wanted to mention that when I did the reports last month, we said that we were going to make the recommendation for, or we will be making the recommendation for the financial advisory services firm, but we'll be making that for the next meeting. So you'll have the recommendation for that meeting. Does anyone have any questions?
Any questions for Ms. Roselle?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, number 2, discussion regarding the resolution authorizing the Luzerne County District Attorney to execute a contract with the Wilkes-Barre-Scranton International Airport for the provision of law enforcement officers at airport security checkpoints. Ms. McDermott, did you want to speak on that at all?
Yes, so at our last board meeting, I did bring it up to the Lackawanna County commissioners about putting their fair share in because, again, it does fall on the taxpayers of Luzerne County only. They don't really know or feel that we need it. And so we did have the discussion. We want to get a little more information. If there's any other option that we could try to utilize, the Pennsylvania State Police that's located there. They have a hangar. It's possible. I don't know. But our DA feels that it's necessary to have this. And also our manager, Crocomo, she also believes that this is public safety and that public safety does come first. But again, we brought it up. Now, you do know Lackawanna County is raising their taxes. They obviously don't have money in the budget this year, but I told them to look very seriously at it for next year. So hopefully we can try to either resolve it another way or have them added into their budget for next year.
Mr. Sabatino and then Mr. Wilovich, do you have something as well? Or go ahead.
Yeah, again, it's critical that we have security there. I mean, sure, things may not have happened majorly up to this point, but what happens if we don't have the security? And we need to keep pressuring our federal legislators as well to help with the LEO funding program. So, I mean, I encourage all of us to reach out to your federal legislators to make sure that we get this done.
I think and one other thing to make mention of is that when the district attorney was here, he did say that there are incidents that occur up there. Of course, we just don't know about them. A lot of it is people accidentally bringing firearms with them and things like that. Of course, that ends up being a real problem, but the police do have to get called in every instance of that. So, Mr. Sabatino.
Controller Griffith did mention that we're getting $60,000, which is about half the money that we would have to pay out from the airport itself. So, I think we need this, and the airport is kicking in some money. So we should take Councilman Wilovich's advice and contact our federal electeds and get them to reauthorize it so we don't have to pay for it.
Mr. Thornton.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I wholeheartedly agree with Mr. Wilovich and Mr. Sabatino that we definitely need security there. However, I was not going to be in favor of voting for this. The way it was written, I read through it, and there was no dollar amounts or percentages or anything like that. It just seemed like we were footing the whole bill. So I'm glad to hear $60,000 being covered by the airport. That's fantastic. I still think there should be a provision in here that, we'll pony up maximum of say $70,000 for the new year coming up, but beyond that we're not. And I think going forward, if the feds don't come up with this money again, which they have been giving to us, I understand every year, but they stopped earlier this year. And since then, Luzerne County has paid the whole ball of wax since then. And I don't think that's right. The other thing I'm not in favor of is raising taxes on Luzerne County residents, the vast majority of whom do not use that airport. I mean, out of 330,000 residents of Luzerne County, I would say at most probably 5%, maybe 5% of the residents use that airport, which would be about, 16,000 people on an annual basis, if that. I don't know. The lower half of Luzerne County, it's not fair to them because if you live in Berwick or Hazleton or Whitehaven, many of those people are flying out of Allentown. And so we'd be taxing a lot of people in this county, consider the senior citizens living alone everywhere. Because we want to provide security at that airport here. So I'm all for security, definitely need it. I'm just not in favor of raising taxes on the people of Luzerne County to provide for it. And that's my position. Thank you.
Just to be clear, though, that it is already in the DA's budget. It's not he's not adding, it's already been in there. And also all, it's other airports that the funding was cut to. It wasn't just Wilkes-Barre-Scranton.
Mr. Liscavige.
So when this came up, I poked around to see what other areas are doing. And I recall one airport that put $1 on the parking for the day, and that was enough to cover this for them. So I suggest that they look for alternative ways, like that airport did. And I don't think $1 if somebody flew out of there for, say, a week each day, 7 days, $7. I don't think that's going to crush anybody. And then it goes back on the person flying, not to the people that aren't using it. And I think it'd be more fair. That was just one thing I came across. There was many others, and it was told to us that they can't put a fee on the ticket, but I did run across that too, where there was a fee on the ticket. So that's not true either, because other people have used that.
Mr. Haas?
Yeah, I was just going to say, when we were co-owners with Lackawanna County with the stadium, that was physically in Lackawanna County. However, they had no problem taking more than their fair share, in my opinion, of the proceeds of the sale of that organization, so of the franchise rather. So I think what's good for the goose, good for the gander. I would hope that they'd be better partners, and I don't know if I like what Mr. Scavage said about a user fee. I think that's very appropriate. However, at the same time, citizens from both counties benefit. So I don't know if you can bring that to a vote with the airport board, our representatives, if it has to come to that in years to come. Anyway, just my 2 cents.
Thank you, Mr. Haas. And I agree as well that we certainly need security at that airport. I have noticed in traveling in other airports throughout the country that, particularly in Philadelphia airport, I was just there recently, and they actually have the Philadelphia police are the ones who do that service there. So to me, it is a little bit strange that we're providing it, and particularly because Lackawanna County is an equal stakeholder on that board. They certainly, even though 99% of the airport sits in Luzerne County, if they want an equal position to be able to make those decisions, I think that they need to have an equal payment in some of these things. Manager Croker, do you have anything you wanted to say?
If I may, this is the contract the agreement is just for 2025, and I think will give us, meaning Luzerne County, the airport, and Lackawanna County, the time to investigate and perhaps initiate the alternatives that Councilman Liscavige suggested, which are very good suggestions. There are some airports the size of ABP that have their own police force, but I don't know if you heard the sirens, but that's not my ride. Anyway, but what we need to do is make sure that the airport is safe. It was a similar size airport where the terrorists boarded the planes that went into the World Trade Center. So security, it really is as necessary, especially when it comes to travel. And the area that we live in, I mean, we're going to be discussing money that we're using for the opioid addiction. There are a lot of drugs that are run through the area, and we need to be prepared. And I think that the district attorney should be applauded for taking on this responsibility when it really historically just fell into his lap. And he picked up the ball and crossed the finish line for us. So there are a lot of different options that we can exercise, and we will.
Thank you, Manager Crocomo. Anybody else for comment on this? Go ahead, Mr.
One
Thornton.
last thing. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Many Lackawanna County residents use that airport to fly in and out of, and so it's not unreasonable to ask Lackawanna County, as Mr. Haas correctly stated, to be good partners here and pony up some of the money. I mean, we're all under budget restraints and constraints, and they use the airport too. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. If there's no other comments, moving on. Number 3, discussion regarding the resolution authorizing the county manager to execute a contract with Vision Government Solutions Incorporated for computer-assisted mass appraisal software upgrade and support services. Ms. Roselle?
Okay, so this is the software that we use to assess the properties within our assessment division. If you look at the per parcel cost that it typically costs for us to assess a parcel of land, it's between $10 and $11. This software will decrease that. It will come down to about $7.23. So the software itself is expiring in 2025, so we have to do something. We have the amount in the budget for 2024 and 2025. The highest payments will be in 26 and 27 because we're doing like as it's being developed, we're going to be paying for it. So in 26 and 27, that's where you have a $500,000 payment each year. So, but for the first 2 years, the budget is already in place for the upgrade. Does anyone have any questions?
Any questions? All right. Thank you very much. All right. For the next several items, they're all ARPA. I'm sorry. Number 5 is discussion regarding the resolution approving the allocation of opioid settlement proceeds to Always Believe Recovery. Manager Kokomo, do you want to speak on that?
Actually, agenda items 5 through, I believe, 13 are all the recommendations of the opioid commission. We have to allocate money by the end of the year. We opened up the application process and we vetted these applications, and the amounts for the total amount that we would be distributing or allocating is $1,564,061.19. It includes Always Believe Recovery, the Hanover School District, Wyoming Seminary, Volunteers of America, Luzerne County Community College, All One Recovery Educational Institute. There's 3 allocations to Children's Service Center. One is for staff development and training. One is for CRS warm handoffs. And the other is the expanded prevention and education program. And then I believe the final one is the Wright Center. So the programs are identified in your packet, and their projects are also identified in your packet. So if you have any questions about them, you can raise them now or before the next meeting.
And just to add to that really quickly, every one of these projects was approved unanimously by the Opioid Commission, and I think 1 or 2 of them had an amended budget. For example, Always Believe Recovery, I believe they requested $1.5 million, and we did cut that a little bit, but every single one of these was approved unanimously by the Opioid Commission. So there was a unanimous agreement about it, and all of them were very good projects. So we think that they will really serve the community well with this money. Mr. Haas, did you have a question?
Yeah. Thanks, Mr. Chair. I couldn't find a good narrative for each of these projects. And I don't want to second guess the committee, because I know they're very capable people, and yourself included on that. And I just want to make sure that we know exactly what we're voting for. Do you think we get a little more information or a better sermon, Manager Kokomo?
Certainly,
on that?
Manager Kokomo, I'm sure we can send them the narratives. For
What
each
we'll
of these
do is
projects.
we'll send you the applications that we received, and they really outline the projects. It has a budget in the application, and some of them even give some metrics on the groups that they will be actually affecting and using their service, and how many people that they feel that they'll be able to serve. It's a varied group. We'll be reaching school students, grade school students, high school students, college students, and then there's other programs that will be treating adults that are suffering from addictions.
Ms. Stevenson?
I was just going to agree with Councilman Hawes. I would love to see a little, either the proposals or applications that go along with some of these projects. I think they're great. I was actually looking forward to the discussion around some of these opioid projects today, so I'd love to see that from that department. Manager Kokomo.
We'll send them along.
Yeah,
Mr.
thanks.
Haas?
And email format's fine for me. I don't need I need to kill a tree to research all that
Sure.
stuff or just take a look. But I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Manager Croakmo and Mr. Chairman, there's more funds available, right? This is just the first phase, just for the public edification, because I know this has been.
No, it's not the first phase. It's the third payment. We get scheduled payments, and this, I believe, is our third payment. And then we already know that we're getting monies for next year. This amount of money needs to be allocated by the end of the year. So there are timetables that when you receive the money, you have to allocate it. It doesn't have to be spent, but it has to be allocated.
Very good. Yeah, I just hope it's more than just building awareness. I really hope it really helps people who've been hurt by this. Real infection. It's been plaguing our county for a long time.
And I believe the application is a rolling application, so we will be continuing to accept them as new projects come along, as we develop new strategies internally to help combat the opioid crisis. So this is going to be a continuous conversation that we'll be having pretty regularly here on council, and certainly every council member is welcome to give their input on this. I think that would be more than helpful if everyone was able to look and see what we're actually doing. This is just, again, what our recommendations were based on, some survey questions that we answered and the actual responses that they gave.
Thank you both for sir and for the whole committee as well. It's an important task, so thank you.
Okay, and for example, Always Believe is an inpatient unit. So they are treating people who actually are suffering from the addiction. But we'll send the applications along.
Oh, Mr. Liscavige, sorry.
I'd just like to say I'd rather see 12 organizations being involved in this than the one idea of the television commercial, which I totally didn't even understand what they were trying to get the point across. So I think this is a lot better spent money, personally.
Right. Any other questions,
Then
comments?
we actually have ideas that we're discussing and investigating that I think will be a really valued use of the monies. One is maybe we can use 50% of the monies for a new body scanner at the prison. So we're looking into that. And then I think there was a suggestion by Councilman Liscavige that perhaps we can build a wing to the prison for inmates that come in who are withdrawing from their addiction. So there's a lot of options that we can use. The monies that we're getting spans another maybe 24 years. So we are starting to discuss maybe long-term plans for the use of the money.
Thank you. All right, any other questions on those items? I think we're going to go right to number 14, unless anybody has any specific questions about any of the, obviously you don't have the applications in front of you, so it'd be hard to ask too many questions about them. Okay, moving on to number 14 then. Discussion regarding the resolution authorizing the use of American Rescue Plan Act funds awarded project to enter into an amended contract with Booth Management Consulting LLC for ARPA grant management services. And Ms. Sparich, however you want to address these next few items, if you want to go through them point by point, or if any of us have any specific questions, that's up to you.
Okay, number 14, the contract amendment. Robin Booth is actually on Zoom. She's traveling because of the holiday, so she is available if you have any questions. And Robin, feel free to jump in. But because of the amount of projects that were awarded and the technical assistance required, they are, in need of some additional funding to finish out, these projects. But this amendment that we're asking for would take us through 2026.
And that should be for the closeout of everything.
Correct.
Correct? Okay.
And if I could,
Go ahead, Ms. Booth.
The Treasury has been holding almost monthly webinars since August in preparation for this big obligation date of December 31st, 2024. And actually, they were clarifying a lot of the things that were not clear as this legislation regulations continue to evolve. Unfortunately, the way that we structured Luzerne, as far as having memorandums of understanding for internal projects, for your revenue replacement, all of those agreements are 100% consistent with what Treasury is now saying. So one of our priorities has been from like October to December was to make sure that the funds are de-obligated. And that involved, as some of you know, we worked with some of you, we've had to reallocate, de-obligate to reobligate. We've touched every project to see if if they're still anticipating spending the awarded funds. And if they weren't, because we do not have a lot of flexibility after this December 31st, 2024 date, if they weren't going to expend the funds, we've been working with the manager and with Michelle to reallocate funds to other projects so that Lucerne leaves nothing on the table. One of the things they also did was Treasury increased the administrative fee associated with managing the funds, which is our contract. They increased the percentage that you could charge to that to 15%. And that was because across the country, there was the administration of these funds. It's a lot because there's a lot of people that don't understand the regulations. So we have to protect the interests of the county. We have had to meet with them to go over some potentially, I'm not going to say right. We've had situations where we've had to take aggressive actions to make sure that those funds are being in line with the intended purposes. We've tried to always maintain a good relationship, understanding that these are your Luzerne County citizens. So we want to be cognizant of that as we also make sure we're protecting the interests of the county. So even with this amendment to increase our fees, our fees would be 2.2% of the administrative fees based on the total amount of the funding. So we're way below the average. It was actually 4% initially that Treasury approved. They increased it to 10%, and then they increased it again to 15%. So Luzerne County took the approach to outsource as opposed to hiring a whole bunch of people that they'll ultimately have to let go when the funds end. So this amendment takes us through 2026 to not just close out, but some we have to monitor. Some we have to make sure they're using the funds for the eligible purposes through technical assistance, through getting you ready for the procurement documents and all the procurement processes, and making sure these projects spend those dollars by 2026. What's not spent has to be returned to the Treasury. So we've been working closely with the manager and with Ms. Sparrow to make sure that these things get done. And those fees reflect the level of effort through 2026 that we'll need to make sure we're able to provide the level of service required to keep the county in full compliance with the requirements. Thank you.
Mr. Thornton, you had a question?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Barrett, and I don't know, you probably know this. Items number 14 through 22 are discussions, or 2 weeks from now, probably motions to pay additional compensation to various departments and individuals and to Booth. Are all of those funds currently going to be deducted from the ARPA funds remaining, or does some of that money come from our general budget?
No, these would come from the ARPA funds.
Thank you.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Does anybody have any other questions about the Booth contract?
Sorry.
So, Ms. McDermott?
Mr. Chair, what was the total amount that they said? Was it 4.4? Because I do remember that 10%.
Well, initially, I think Robin said it was 4%.
Yes.
I can tell you when we reviewed the initial proposals before a consultant was hired, they were one of the cheapest by far. But she said then it increased to 10 and then 15%.
But how much is their percentage? She said
2.2.
only. That's all
Yeah,
they're. 2.2. Okay.
Yeah, we've stayed well below.
Okay.
And we have never raised our rates, which is uncommon for us. This is our third year on the contract that we're going to, and we haven't proposed an increase for subsequent years.
Thank you.
And we appreciate that very much.
Yeah.
Mr. Haas?
Very good. Yeah. Hi, Ms. Booth. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate your service. How does Booth handle Luzerne County? Do you have full-time employees devoted to us as clients? And if so, how many? And how does that compare to some of your other clients?
So we have a team. Well, actually, Luzerne has its own team of 5 full-time. that just handles Luzerne. And that's because of the level of effort required. It's daily, pretty much all day. So that's what we have. Our other clients, it depends. Some have internal staff that they really staffed up to deal with ARPA. And they use us to do more like monitoring and technical assistance. I will say for Luzerne County and some of the other ones, that's our common model, about full-time level of effort on particular clients. And then if necessary, we'll augment with other staff. Like sometimes we've had to do audits, so I'll have to pull audit staff, but not for Luzerne, but that's our current staffing pattern for Luzerne.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, and Mr. Haas, just to add to that, they have done a fantastic job. They really, every day, are on the phone tracking some of these organizations and entities down, trying to make sure that they spend the money appropriately, and when they do need to deobligate funds or return funds or do changes of scope, anything like that, that all of the legwork starts with them. It ends with us, but it's just us saying yes or no. They do 99% of the work.
And just so you know, Booth was extremely busy within the last 2 weeks. I got an email from Gladys this afternoon. We're going to have about 20 modifications for the next meeting. Some instances, they're actually going to be returning some of the funds, deobligating it because they won't meet that deadline or their project is done under budget. So they really do, go above and beyond. I actually have Gladys's personal cell phone if there are questions at the last minute.
Excellent. Any other questions, comments? All right, Ms. Sparrow, would you like to speak on number 15 to 20?
Well,
or
those-
Manager Crocomo, would you like to speak on number 15 to 20?
Sure, those are monies that we would like to allocate to certain staff members that are doing extra work in processing these ARPA monies, and it includes accounts payable. It includes, Jen Thomas, who is my assistant. I'm not taking any time that I spend on ARPA. I'm not taking any monies, but Jen does work that I ask her to do on the ARPA projects. Obviously, Michelle and Mark Majikis and Mary Roselle. So they are doing extra work because of it. It's money's coming out of the ARPA funds to augment their salaries. Number 21 is actually Mark Majikis is a staff member of community development. He gets paid through HUD money. We have to reimburse HUD. We have to reimburse community development because of the time that he uses to work on the ARPA projects. And one of the reasons why he's doing that is that he was on the ground floor in budget and finance, and then he moved over to community development, and we wanted to keep him on because he does the final reports, and he knows the history of the grant. So that is up to agenda item 21.
Any questions on any of that?
One more.
Mr. Thornton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that since the beginning of this, Ms. Barrett has arranged on-site visits with many of these recipients that received small amounts or large amounts from the county from the ARPA funds. And none of these visits are performed unless council members are present. So I look around, some of you are at almost every one. I try to go as many as I can. And we actually, in the interest of the public's perception, we like to go there, see what they've done with the money, ask them questions, how they spent it, what their obstacles were, challenges, and we verify, just from eyesight and conversation, the beautiful things they've done. A lot of very, very nice things have been done in this county with this ARPA money in the past 18 months. And there's a lot more to be done going forward. As Ms. Barrett mentioned earlier, there's still $51 million in that that is obligated, that will be paid out over the next 2 years. But just yesterday, a few of us were over at the Kirby Center. And I'm going to give them a plug, because if you haven't been there lately, you got to go in there. It is very, very very nice place now. It always was nice, but they suffered a tremendous debilitating flood just a short time back, and their entire lower level below the general seating area, I was never down there. They gave us a complete tour of the whole building, even through all the old raceways that are almost 100 years old. I had to duck my head with all the pipes in there. But, I mean, they did a tremendous job down there. And they educate us stuff I never knew. You know, when these big bands come from out of town, they think highly of themselves. And they have contracts and agreements with the Kirby. And when we get there, we want a staging area in your lower level there. And they're like nice lounges now. We need dressing rooms. And some of these big singers are very specific of what they want in their dressing room. We learned that yesterday. And they have bars down there. They have a catering area, a cafeteria area for the roadies that come, the staff members of these bands. And if you don't provide those kind of things, they're not coming. So in order to compete with all the other theaters in Pennsylvania and other areas, we need to have these things in this area in order to provide for the arts, because it's all comes under the category of the arts. And I'm a big fan of that, big favor of all of that. So I want the media and the public to know that we do verify. We go out almost on a weekly basis for a year and a half now and do these site visits, and I'm always tremendously impressed. Thank you.
And part of the reason why those are being done is so that we can inform the public a little bit better about how some of these ARPA funds were spent. And we know that there were a lot of questions about it when we first allocated some of these dollars. We tried to discuss every project as much as possible in our meetings, but you just don't get a sense of that when you're talking about it, when you see words on paper. We actually get to go there and put our hands on some of the actual accomplishments, and they really have been amazing for the community. We found out that there's so much more need actually in Luzerne County in a lot of the organizations that we've given money to than we initially thought. So it has been quite a learning experience and has really opened our eyes as to what the people of Luzerne County have been going through. And I really am very happy with just about all of the money that we allocated to it, because it's been really, really positive experience with all of these organizations. Mr. Sabatino?
Just to dovetail off of what you gentlemen are saying, Michelle Sparridge really does a great job of wrangling council people to get to these events. So I'd like to give her a round of applause for actually handling us. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, we'll move on to number 22. Discussion regarding the resolution allocating American Rescue Plan interest funds to the Office of Law. Manager Crocomo, did you want to speak on that?
I'll speak on that. I feel Harry's pain after being the chief county solicitor for many years, and I think Shannon probably does as well, because she sat in that role as well. There were, there's a lot of monies that are coming out of the special legal fund. So we're, and we pay off many of those bills out of that. So what we would like is $435,000 in ARPA interest to be used to pay off some of our obligations that we have with legal cases. We have been really inundated over the last year with election cases. Many of them are frivolous, but we need to defend the county. So we need to use some of that interest money so that we can pay off our legal bills.
Thank you. Any other questions? Any remarks? Okay. Next up, we'll have number 23, discussion regarding the remaining ARPA funds and county projects.
I believe Nick
Pecora,
and Jen.
All right.
Good evening, Council. Tonight we're asking for your consideration for funding for several road and bridge projects and some repairs to our district salt sheds. We did attach a summary of the road and bridge project scopes. The engineering on these projects is near completion and they're ready to bid. So these are basically shovel-ready projects. So with the allocation timing, we thought that we would bring these before you for your consideration. We have our salt sheds, they're in desperate need of repair also. And to preserve the groundwater and the stormwater around them, we were hoping that we would be able to use the funds in order to repair these. We do have to do our application to Booth for them for consideration and approval before we would bring it back to you, but we wanted to bring this before you if you had any questions to consider, and we'll be making the application within the next few weeks.
Mr. Thornton?
Yeah, quick question. I know over the past 6 months or a year, we've brought on the outside engineering firm of Riley and Associates, and he's been, I know, diligent in compiling a list, a priority list of the roads and bridges in most need of repair in this county. These particular projects, and I haven't talked about it with you, are they at the top of his list?
DeMunn's, that's the first project that's on our list, Lower DeMunn's Road. That's paving and stormwater. That project needs full depth reclamation, so it would basically be milling the road down to the base and rebuilding it. We probably get the most complaints on that road for safety reasons due to drainage. So if the paving is something that we can work into the project, we would like to do that. So we do the safety and stormwater improvements on that. This one is certainly a priority because of that, and we were under contract with our prior engineer, and the engineering is already basically paid for and completed. We just have to restart the engineering process, put it out to bid, and hopefully we can get that out early 2025, and then start the project in the spring of next year, and hopefully have that completed by the end of the summer.
Any other roads or bridges besides?
Kiss and Weather Bridge, that's a bridge and culvert replacement, and as well as the Patla, that's a bridge culvert also.
Okay.
Patla, that's in Ross Township, right, Nick?
Yeah, and not much a priority on these since Tom Riley is not done with the priority list yet, and these ones are done with design, ready to go right now.
Okay, thank you.
And Lower DeMunn's, I mean, that needs to be repaved terribly. That road is in disrepair.
If I could have, Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Mr. Haas.
Yeah, Jen, how much of Lower DeMunn's? Can you tell us exactly from where to where?
Yes.
Exactly in the
Lower
length? I'm
DeMunn's
looking
is
here at the narrative.
1.98 miles.
Am I looking at the wrong thing? I'm looking at where it says-
1.98
Yeah,
miles?
if you look
I
on the
see it there.
project scope, you'll
I'm
see
on
the
page
exhibits on the
206.
1.98 miles, and then there's the, or 1.96, and then there's the scope of the work that's going to be done on that roadway. So we've included those because that is what the engineer presented to us and the work that was completed, and what will be included in that. So once we put that to bid, there'll be the repairs that are included in that scope. That'll be the project for next summer.
Okay.
So the descriptions for the first three projects on the discussion, Lower DeMunn's, Kiss and Weather, and Patla, they all have a scope attached to the agenda submittal. The salt sheds, we are working with Riley on those. They were projects that came up over this summer, but they are important that we get done, and we feel strongly that this is something that Booth would approve due to containing the salt in the sheds and eliminating contamination in the areas.
Any other questions?
I'm just looking here, just to carry on. Thank you for that, guys. So Lower DeMunn's from, like, I don't see a map here. Exactly what portion of the road? Is that the entire county length? Is it almost 2 miles?
No, full county length is 4 miles. This
4.
would be about half.
Okay,
I'll get you coordinates.
Yeah, if you could. I think, and all these, if we could put this on the county website, let the people know what we're really doing, I think it's a noble, worthwhile project, like John said. And, regarding the salt sheds, I think that's a good idea too. Get them all done at one time, and then we don't have to keep on reinventing the wheel. When was the last time we had work done on the salt sheds?
We did do an emergency repair at the District 5 garage or District 2 garage over the summer. There was just wear and tear on the structure that we needed to reinforce the walls and the roof lines on it. And I think we added to the pitch to pull the drainage off of the roof away from the waterways.
Yeah, why don't we say exactly what it was? That shed was in such disrepair, the walls weren't even there. And there was garbage strewn all over. It wasn't something that happened overnight. These sheds were neglected for years. And we have to take care of them. I couldn't believe what I saw.
Mr. Liscavige.
So I'm looking at that figure for them salt sheds, $200,000. I think you should look at possibly using the, I'm going to call them Jimmy Hoffa blocks, stacked, that interlock, and then with the canopy top, because the wood a lot of people use pressure treated wood, and most places they don't care and they put the bucket right through that. They won't do that with these concrete borders around. I'm just
Right. No,
speaking
no,
from
we'll-
experience, it
we'll-
doesn't work.
We'll take it under advisement. Thank you.
Any other comments? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on, number 24, discussion regarding the resolution creating an election inquiry committee. Mr. Haas?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so I asked to put this on last week's work session just because I got quite a bit of calls from the election. I'm sure all of you did as well. Again, not to point fingers and not to blame anyone whatsoever. We just want safe, secure elections that the public can trust in. All right. And if you look at page 238, and thank you to the Office of Law for just putting my entire proposal on there. When we look at this, essentially, the notion is just it's about 2/3 of the way down. Obviously, convene the inquiry committee, which we had one a few years ago. I served as the vice chair, and I thought it was very helpful. We put together some really good work, but the scope should be very limited, but very specific. And if you look at, we should have a list. Number one, compile a list of irregularities and difficulties with the general election. I'm envisioning like a spreadsheet, and we just want full transparency. Number two, have a proper forum so that stakeholders can come together to build efficiencies for the future. And we want to equip our staff and our management. This is not going out to point blame or to muddy the waters to find things that didn't exist. I think a lot of these things could be corrected with just better communication. But again, I'm on the outside looking in. Essentially, number three is the whole purpose of this. Harrisburg has to act. I was so frustrated when that gentleman from Hanover came here, and he was beside himself. He got multiple ballots, and it was just absolutely absurd. And this is caused by a lack of leadership in Harrisburg, in my opinion. The judiciary has weighed in. They've legislated from the bench and created other situations that there was never an issue, but it's been created by bad legislature and then bad judicial action. So I'm envisioning something we can come together as an inquiry committee, which is very appropriate, and just ascertain exactly what happened. You saw the manager then a couple days later put out a press release, and I got to speak with Romilda since then, and I appreciate Romilda if you're still on there. Just the communication efforts. Remember, this is the elected body. And I think the public is really sick and tired of having elections run amok. I really think there's a way we can fix this, but we've got the Government Study Commission that was convened specifically because we had election issues with how the charter is situated. I think this will all benefit them if we put something like this together. You've all got emails from the controller saying that he would like to also investigate. I really don't care how it gets done, but I would just like to see some kind of final product. And even if we put this on the agenda for, I know we've got a very quick and brief meeting next week, Mr. Chair, maybe even for the beginning of the new year, if we could put this on a voting session. And I'm just speaking out loud here because Romilda said if she could really do an internal evaluation of how they did things, and I think Brian Thornton talked about that last week, about doing that. I don't want us to get in the way of anything, but at the same time, I just want to make sure we're very crystal clear about anything that happened. And I think the separation of powers is the right way to do that cleanly with the council as opposed to the executive side of things. But if it gets done on the executive side of things, I don't have a problem with that either. I was away, so I didn't get a chance to talk about this before. it was put on the agenda. So I'm all ears. I'm all about getting feedback from all of you here on this side of the table with me. But just want to make sure we get something done, that Harrisburg will finally act on this.
I definitely agree, Mr. Haas, that Harrisburg needs to be the ones to take the most action on this situation. Some of the situations that they've put our county and other counties in over the last 5-6 years with some of the laws that have been passed has just really been terrible. They have our staff doing things that they really aren't used to doing. And I think that there's some responsibility on the part of some of these activist groups that have been coming into Luzerne County, being that we're this bellwether county now. They have taken advantage, I think, of some of the election laws that have been so just poorly written and poorly enforced that I'm not saying that they purposely do this, but it ends up causing more problems for our election bureau, for our election board at the end of the day. And the citizens get angry, as they should. We get the questions, as we should. So I definitely don't disagree that we need to have some type of investigation into this, or at least a closer look. I think that the manager offering to kind of be that first spear doing it is, in my opinion, the most appropriate, because the executive branch, the administration, is who is administering the election. So they may be able to just, say, hey, we understand where we went wrong. Here's where it was, and we'll go from there. And I think that maybe at least waiting until they have done their internal investigation might be, in my opinion, the best idea. I'm not opposed to this in any way. I think it would probably be in the best interest of everybody at the end of the day, as long as we have some actual actionable things that can be done. I'm not sure. I just after having read and heard about what happened with the last election inquiry committee, I don't really know that there was anything that actually ended up getting done or changing, at least significantly, in the years following that committee's closure. So if we can do something to make sure that there's actual, actionable items to have our election bureau and our administration do, I think that would be a really positive thing.
No, I
On the
appreciate that,
question,
Mr.
can
Chair.
I ask a question, Hans?
Go ahead. Sure, go ahead.
Because I'm reading this and I'm here. I'm definitely with you as far as having Harrisburg be responsible and partake in how this sort of operates for us in the county. But does this mean now we are going to be, or at least the 3 council members that you have listed as part of the committee, are we now going to be interrogating the election board for months on end to receive answers? And what sort of tangible answers are you looking for with this committee?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, and for new members especially, so an inquiry committee, it's investigative, it's not punitive, and it's a notch below an investigative type format. So inquiry is to inquire, right? So we've had this before, and as far as the actionable items, the committee did offer up a lot of actionable items. It's online. You can still take a look at that. That was 2021. We finished up. I stepped off council, and nothing was really followed through on it. So I think that might have caused some of the confusion. We've had a lot of different directors. In the meantime, we've had a lot of overturn there, or turnover, and so therefore there's been some drop balls just internally because of the turnover. But this is not like an inquisition where we're going to have people and throw stones at them, try to get them to confess to something. It's nothing like that, Ms. Stevenson, but what it is to try to get the facts. And we're in a position that we do have subpoena power through an inquiry committee, so we can compel people to come and offer up, what they saw and what happened there. And just we have, as an inquiry, more authority than just say, like the manager having other people come in from her own staff. And also it also links up the elected officials with the public. They can come as well. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Any other questions?
And I'll just say too, unless anybody has anything to say, Mr. Chairman, so I put on there the scope is right there, but the timeline, it should be purposely short, and I would envision, again, I'm just one person, but meeting either weekly or bi-weekly for a very short period of time, have people come in, deliver the package. A lot of legislation happens in the early months of a new legislative session. Harrisburg has divided government right now, so we have one party has the governorship and the assembly, the other has the Senate. Wouldn't be a novel idea if they actually got together and did something for the state that everybody could sign on to. And I really think this is what needs to be done. We can't have more executive actions or governing from the bench. The legislature really has to act on this. And hopefully that will take place. I've been let down before, but you know what? This is the time we really need to move forward. I don't want to see this happen ever again in Luzerne County. It was just a mess, and it happened because of a lack of leadership on high.
Manager Crocomo, did you want to speak on that at all?
Well, I clearly and unequivocally object to the use of the words amok and I trust that Councilman Hawes is doing making this request for all the right reasons, but I want to tell everybody, because I watched the workers at the Election Bureau work for weeks in advance, probably since the mid-September. They were there every day. They were there well into the evening. And as we got closer to the election, they were there sometimes until 11 and midnight. And they did that every day. And they were still doing it. And so I'm offended by this on their behalf, because it's couched in the term of an inquiry committee, but it will be an inquisition. And my staff is going to be paraded in front of a committee and interrogated. And they're going to be paraded in front of a committee and interrogated when they have to prepare for a municipal election. They have to start preparing for that municipal election in January. We had to divert Emily Cook to testify and sit in a courtroom because there was a lawsuit filed. She shouldn't have been sitting in that courtroom. She should have been in the bureau. And then we have a board that makes demands on Emily and Steve and takes them away from the work that they need to do. So I do object to this. And I talked to Councilman Hawes. I said the Office of Law is doing a review. And I trust that they will be independent in that review. And I want a task force created that will have people on it who have different ideas and come from different backgrounds, because we do have to go to Harrisburg. And I just came back from CCAP today, and I can tell you, I spoke to commissioners from other counties, and they experienced the same challenges. And Councilman Sabatino and I and Councilwoman Stevenson last night, we had the privilege of having dinner with former Governor Corbett. And he agreed that there has to be significant and fundamental changes in our election code. And I think that he will work with us on that. If Councilman Sabatino and Councilwoman Stevenson want to add to what a conversation we had, I'm very welcoming of that. But the only thing that will come as a result of this inquiry committee is further distrust in the Bureau staff. And the Bureau staff worked 100%, and they delivered. So I'm asking council not to create this committee.
Thank you, Manager Crocomo. Mr. Haas, I just have a question for you. Can you talk about some of the specifics of the questions, the complaints, the concerns that you receive from residents? Because I
Sure.
certainly have received some of them too. And in some organizations that you and I are both involved in, we had discussions about this as well. And from what I've understood or been able to kind of decipher out of all of this, is that for every one issue there was, or one legitimate problem that may have occurred, the Bureau might have received 25 phone calls on the same thing, because my sister's brothers, cousins, aunt might have called and said that they saw this. And so like it spiraled out of control. I'm just wondering if you can give us some specifics about the things that you'd like to have discussed by the inquiry committee.
Sure.
Or even specific examples.
Yeah, specific examples are polls not opening on time, wrong calibrations with time functions, lack of attendance from some of our poll workers, just not showing up to the polls, people not receiving phone calls or, service when they called on the Election Bureau, people receiving ballots on the day of the election, right? Some not receiving them at all. Some people receiving, I'm just going down my mental recall, not receiving them at all on election day in the time. Households receiving one ballot who submitted them at the same time, and then one not receiving them at all. Some submitted them in October, early October, and not receiving them at all. These kind of things that in inquiry, and that's why I put on here, gather feedback from the public. This is not just putting somebody on the spot here. It's codifying things that happened that we can take to Harrisburg and say, here's what happened. Here's what needs to be done. And if it's a funding issue, we can ascertain if it's a funding issue. If it's a train issue, we can ascertain that. We also have issues with the election board and the election bureau. There's severe turf battles going on there. And I think if we're going to make this better, it would have been really helpful to have this done in the first place, but that's why we had the Government Study Commission, to resolve some of these problems. So I'm sorry you take offense, Ramona. You know that. It's not my intention. We talked on the phone about that, and I think I was very appropriate, but we need some clarity, because we're still seeing some fundamental mistakes between the election board and the election bureau. And then you throw in the mail-in ballots, and then we have the curing that took place. It's still recently wrapped up. I mean, all these things emanate from a real lack of clarity at the state level. So again, I'm not here to fry anybody. I'm not here to inquisit anybody. But at the same time, we really need a product that shows here's exactly what happened. I don't think we should be afraid to bear ourselves to the public and say, here's what happened, because the public knows. And the public talked to all of you as well, just like they did me. Now that's
Right.
that's dozens of them.
No, I agree that those definitely are some legitimate issues, but I think there's a lot more questions that maybe need to be asked, rather than just saying, okay, somebody received their mail-in ballot on the day of the election. It could depend on when they registered for that ballot. It could depend on what method they used in registering for that ballot. I know one organization that I had witnessed some of what they were doing in some of my private activism, that they were taking both voter registration applications and mail-in ballot applications, and however they were handing them in, particularly the voter registration ones, they were making individuals fill out paper applications, which I thought was ridiculous when we can do it online and it'd be done instantly, so that they can take information off of there and put it into their own records for whatever purpose it would be. At least that's my assumption. And they would then take 200, 300, 400 applications, bring them to the election bureau and say, okay, here you go, put them all in. And it would be a week before, 2 weeks before. It could be a month before, but to have to go in and enter all that information and manually, somebody could write their name. Maybe they could write an R backwards, or a way that maybe somebody doesn't realize they think it's an N or an F or whatever. One example that we had was an individual who had registered to vote or registered for a mail-in ballot, and he put his last name in the first name line and his first name in the last name line, and his two names were common names. So things like that occur. And I think that there's a lot more that goes into some of this than maybe just saying, okay, they didn't get their ballot in time. I think that there's a lot more questions that should be asked on some of these things.
Well,
Not
you're
that,
absolutely right, John.
Not that any of this
Unequivocally.
is not important and should be investigated, but I think that those are some of the areas where we can start.
Well, I think too the fact that the public is probably unaware of that's gamemanship on both sides of political aisle. They do that to drum up, drum up issues, dropping a whole bunch of applications off via paper format, day before they're due or the day that they're due. Yeah, that's a problem. And the antiquated shore system. There's just so many facets here that, again, it's not a Luzerne County Election Bureau staff issue uniquely. There's a lot of components here. And that's what I would like for us to examine this.
Mr. Thornton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I haven't spoken out about our recent election, so I'll speak here now about it since all this is coming up. I, for one, believe our employees of the Election Bureau did an outstanding job, better job than they've ever done before, and there's some new people there. And I did notice over the past 2 months that I'd say 95%, my figure, everything went great. There are occasions when I know of one poll not opening on time when the judge of elections had a sudden family emergency that person had to attend to. And I always say, out of 700 or 800 polling employees around 186 precincts, you're going to have that. It's a lot of people. To say all 800 people are not going to have any issues ever, that happens. But what I did notice, if there were some issues that the Election Bureau experienced, when I inquired and got deeper into the weeds, I discovered much of it was intentional interference by outside forces. Okay? There were actually organized groups on both the right and the left whose, in my opinion, pure intention was to interfere with the election here. And it included many different strategies. One was to bombard and flood our election bureau with so many phone calls that nobody could possibly return them. And they would leave voice message after voice message after voice message till the voicemail box was full. And therefore, legitimate callers who had a real issue couldn't leave a message. And they got furious. But they don't know all this other extraneous stuff is going on. And I'm not blaming any one side. They were both sides, extreme on both sides, to the point where a lot of the voice messages that were left was a script. The same exact script, read by different people over and over. And all they did was fill up the mailboxes. And no matter what we did with employees there, I understand somebody just answering the calls all day long. There was no way possible you could answer all those phone calls because most of it was for nefarious reasons. And that's unfortunate because there are people that have serious problems and issues and they couldn't get through. But we have intentional interference here in this county. And why? People ask me why. I've talked to residents. I said, I can only speculate. Maybe they interfere to the point where they want to see us stumble, and then they could call foul, fraud. If their candidates don't get elected, there was fraud committed. And maybe that's their intention. Maybe that's why they're trying to interfere so much and cause all this chaos and anarchy. It's sad. We weren't in this place 5 years, 10 years ago. We're there now. We live in a society now so deeply divided that people of all ends of the spectrum will do everything they can to disrupt the process. I'm not commenting on your suggestion about election inquiry committee. I do fear that it would shed more negative light on some very good employees here. You are correct. There's a disconnect, discord, disharmony between the election board and the election bureau. And the election bureau people, as Manager Crocamo so eloquently stated, had to go to court hearings at the 11th hour when they needed to be in the election bureau office performing the necessary functions and duties of their managerial and leadership positions, and they couldn't be there. And that's unfortunate. So I don't blame the workers. I don't blame the employees for that. I think the state legislators know that these are issues that they have failed to address. If they don't know, I'm saying it right now and here. There are issues they need to address. One way or the other, whatever it is, we'll live by it. But we're having these issues across 67 counties. And due to the ambiguity and the vagueness of the laws at the state level, it is creating lawsuits across all the counties. Millions of dollars in litigation fees for all the counties. Who pays for those? The taxpayers of the counties, because of ambiguous and vagueness of the laws in Harrisburg. Many laws were changed in 2020 due to COVID, and rightfully so. It was a dangerous time. But they were never clarified. They never passed legitimate passage of the legislature. They should now take them to the floor and pass them one way or the other. Then everybody knows how to operate out here. And that's what I see, as what's going on. I remember the one night, we were here a few weeks before the election. Some of us were out in the rotunda with Manager Crocamo doing a wonderful ceremony honoring the local teams and individuals in this county. A couple of individuals received national acclaim, state champions. Misericordia was one of them, I know. State champs. We had all the athletes here. It was a great recognition ceremony. And as the ceremony is going on, there's a whole bunch of people protesting right outside on the steps that was coming through the doors and flooding a wonderful ceremony. Now, I don't begrudge protesters. Everybody has a right to protest. But the issues they were protesting over were due to the ambiguity and the vagueness of our state laws. And some of our state legislators were out on those steps with them, protesting and complaining also. And that's unfortunate. And I haven't spoken to this point. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And maybe you want to be on the committee, Brian.
Ms. Smith?
But it's things like that.
Listening to this and reading this resolution and listening to what Manager Kokomo has to say, there are certainly issues that the state needs to address. I think we all can agree on that. But there are also issues that we need to address. I don't think that this resolution needs to be a parade. I don't think it needs to be an interrogation. I think Councilman Haas's resolution is looking for us to work together and even perhaps provide a support system for the employees who have worked so hard. There's no denying that Luzerne County has had many issues. The 119th this year, people getting multiple ballots, and these aren't singular issues like I put my name in the wrong spot or I applied for my mail-in ballot too late. These are overall overarching issues. As I mentioned, the 119th district this year, many people receiving multiple ballots. Obviously, the paper issue that we had, there were issues with on-demand voting that we had, the turnover that we've been experiencing in our bureau, as well as perhaps using consultants and even rumors. Chairman Lombardo mentioned someone giving in hundreds, I don't know what you said, 300, 200 applications on the last day that it was due. That was a rumor that went way out of control. I've also heard rumors about ballots being found in bags late, and these rumors are all also hurtful, as well as the issues that we actually face. I don't believe that this resolution is meant to say to the executive branch or the administration that they're not doing an excellent job. I think it's just meant to make information clear. It's important that we learn from our past. And I think it's important that we, as the people who have been voted to the legislative branch of this county, help enact improvements. And maybe those improvements will help make improvements across the state. Manager Kokomo is afraid that this will result in more distrust in our bureau staff. However, when one is not afraid of transparency, when one is willing to make information clearer, I think that this could have a resulting in more trust in our Bureau staff. The best case scenario here, and I think we're all thinking about the worst case scenario, right? And I mean, I'm a lawyer, I get it. I live in worst case scenario land. It's not a fun place to be. But there is a best case scenario here where we have a better understanding of why we had these issues, where we have more clear information, where we have a support, where we become a support to the Bureau, and where we find more trust in our Bureau. Vice Chair Thornton mentioned that he felt that one of the biggest problems were outside forces intending to disrupt our election. And maybe that is one of the largest problems. But I believe that those problems could be explored with this resolution. And if it is, Harrisburg should know. And perhaps this resolution could be a starting point for statewide change to our elections to ensure that they are free and fair. Thank you.
Any other comments? Mr. Sabatino, do you have something you wanted to add? No? Okay. Anybody else have any other?
I have one more thing.
Go ahead.
I would like to see a larger amount of people on this committee, not just 3, maybe 5. That's all.
Okay.
If we could entertain that, if we're going to entertain the resolution at all.
Sure. Mr. Haas?
Just to wrap this up, Mr. Chair, and thanks for the discussion. So we have our council meeting in 2 weeks that we're going to approve the budget. We have one more meeting, correct, at the end of the year, isn't it just a formal
17th,
meeting?
there
We
should be
said
one meeting, yeah.
A formal meeting. Could we even push this off if you choose to move forward? You as the chairman, push it off till then. I don't think we need to muddy the waters for next week, but maybe in that time, maybe if manager can see what she has on her end. Like I said, the goal is just to get a product out that we can get some clarity on this. And even what Councilman Thorin said about, people are bombarding our phone lines. That should really be looked into. That's part of the purview of this committee. I don't know if that means phone logs or things like that. And then a solution would be, okay, how about there should be an internal number where just our poll workers can contact, so they can break through, have to worry about getting logged up. And that's just something I'm thinking off the cuff here. But this committee, just like my colleague here said, that this is for the good. And if however it gets done, doesn't matter to me. It shouldn't matter to any of us, but we should really move forward.
Any other
Just for
go ahead.
As a point of information, the poll workers, the judges have text capabilities. We've had that. We use it to put out a singular message for all the poll workers and the judges of elections, and they are able to contact us as well. As a matter of fact, on election day, we have a running board, and we keep tallies of the text messages that we get from our poll workers. So we do have an alternate system already in place. And I just want to correct something on the record. We do not have a paper issue in this election. So I want everybody to be clear. There are statements that are being made that are absolutely not based on fact.
Right. Thank you, Manager Crocomo. And I agree with that. And there are definitely some things that I think is really important to understand what the reality, what the truth of the matter is, especially as it relates to the 119th issue. Yes, it did cause some problems on the back end as we started to count the actual ballots, but that issue wasn't something that the county caused. That was an issue from our vendor. And I think it's something that we can, as a council, look into when we are looking at renewing the contract with said vendor in the future. So those are some things that I think we can definitely talk about, but we need to look a little bit more in a more nuanced way than just saying, oh, the issue happened, it was in Luzerne County, therefore it was Luzerne County's fault. Go ahead, Ms. Smith. And then Mr. Liscavige.
My response, or my bringing up the 119th wasn't just the final product, and it did bother me that there were votes that weren't counted. However, my issue was before we canceled the mail-in ballots, we could have checked what wards were were looked at, or I'm sorry, what wards were affected. We could have looked at what wards were affected because not all of the wards were affected, and that would have brought down the amount of mail ballots. I'm not trying to armchair quarterback. That wasn't, what you're referring to wasn't what I meant when I mentioned the 119th.
That could not have been done.
Problem.
That could not have been done.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Liscavich and then Mr. Sabatino. I apologize, Jimmy.
I personally think that we did a great job. Not we, but, the Bureau. And if you take out the misprint of the ballot out of the whole picture, there wasn't, in my opinion, many problems to even speak about here tonight. And I'm going to just say this, and probably maybe some people will be offended, but as a kid growing up, if you play baseball and every day you walk out in that field, I say, you suck, and I say it 50,000 times, you know what? Probably by the second year you're playing baseball, you're going to think, you know what? I suck. I shouldn't even go out. So I'm kind of sick and tired since I've been on this council hearing everything about the Election Bureau. And I think if maybe we just don't bring a light to it every month and every year, maybe some of the problems aren't that big, but we make them big. Because when I first got on this council, we're only a few months in, and we were looking at different machines for voting. So I picked up the phone, and I called Texas, I called Arizona, and I called a few other states. And you know what? I was amazed to find out that the problems that they incurred compared to what we have here were nothing. We had nothing compared. They had shredded ballots. They had ballots not being printed. We haven't experienced really any of that. And after I got off the phone, I said, thank God we don't have 1/10 of that. So I think if people reach out and talk to other states, they're going to find out it could be a lot worse. We just don't hear about it, I think, on this end of the country. But it happens, and it happens a lot. But we're not hearing about it. But I think if we get people that just keep talking about it, the end result is you hear it in your head, even when you don't want to hear it. And I'm just getting tired of it, I guess.
Mr. Sabatino.
Thank you. I want to mention something that Councilman Haas alluded to. I think we should wait for the manager or the Office of Law's report before we pull the trigger on this. So I would ask that we not put this on the agenda until we've had time for Office of Law to make that report and for us to review it. So I wouldn't put a timetable saying, this meeting in December or this meeting in January, but I would like to see that report first before I would even consider any of this. So I would ask that we have a little patience with our hired staff that we have put in place through the county manager and give them time to work.
Right, and if I could, Mr. Chair, and I really don't have a problem with that. That's very reasonable as well. And I definitely think next week should not be a time to do that since we're going to be locked up with things. But I think it wouldn't be a bad idea to have it on the agenda just to keep the discussion going. Not to not listen to what my colleague just said here, but to talk about, we don't want to suck every week, but we just want to make sure that that we get some movement on it. You know what I mean? But I see what you're talking about, Jimmy.
Okay. Ms. Smith?
And maybe we might find that we don't suck. It might be a positive thing.
Any other comments? Anybody else? All right, moving on to the budget work session. We have Division 80 Public Defender first. Mr. Yeager.
Our budget is pretty straightforward. We have worked very closely with our county manager and Mary Roselle in arriving at what we feel is a fair and appropriate budget that addresses our needs and the needs of the county and our ability to effectively carry on our job representing the indigent clientele of our county. If you note, we received a $74,000 increase in our MHDS funding, which has been very helpful to our office. And we also have decreased expenditures in 7 areas for our office. So it's our opinion that this is a fair and equitable budget so that we can carry on and continue to represent our clients effectively.
Any questions on the public defender budget? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Short and
Appreciate it.
sweet. All right, Division 40 Corrections, Mr. Wilbur.
Good evening, Council. So tonight, we're going to take a look here for the 2025 proposed budget, which first and foremost, I would say it was a teamwork, team effort, just like I think that's echoed throughout every division that's come up. But I believe that as we worked at my administration, the budget committee, the county manager, that we have a budget here that I'm pleased to present to you, because we had to do some hard work, but hard work got us here at this point. You look at our adopted revenue for 24, we were at $1,416,640. Our proposed revenue for 25 is $1,319,450. So it's a little bit of a decrease. I'll explain that in a little bit. Our adopted expenses in 24, $31,737,576, and our proposed expenses are less than what we came in with 24. Again, a lot of hard work, a lot of effort went into this, and it's going to be $31,491,44 is our proposal, is what we're projected looking at. When you look at our revenues, we don't have a lot of revenue stream in the Division of Corrections, and so the first one there, 4233, 44510, $450,000 that we used in 24, that was the opioid settlement money for the medically assisted treatment program. Through just discussion, the decision was made, instead of putting it into the 40 budget and then taking it out of the 40 budget, just use the opioid settlement fund itself. So you'll see a reflection there in the revenue, but you also see a reflection in the expense line when it comes to prisoner inmate health care. That number is going to decrease because that money then will be not reflected in just general inmate health care. And then also our other income, the other change that we did have for 25 is in that other income line. We looked at utilizing a $500,000 from the Inmate Welfare Fund. Again, the Inmate Welfare Fund is there to benefit the inmates, and we're looking to utilize that to subsidize inmate food services, but the line item is kitchen and groceries on 4235. Just a couple other things I wanted to point out is with the wages, obviously, is always the biggest part of that, because we are a employee-driven organization in the Division of Corrections. But those increases that you'll see there are in relation to the potential of the new collective bargaining agreement, which has not yet been ratified. And then the other one to look at, two institutions, 4233, middle of the page there, 59026. That is the day reporting center program. And the reason we're going to see a little bit of a decrease there is over the last 4 years, there's been a decline in the amount of individuals that have utilized that program. So we felt pretty confident in changing that number just a little bit. So, any questions?
Mr. Wilbur, I just have one question
Sure.
really quickly. Outside inmate housing, I know it's not really a huge line item, but can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. So that line item, if I don't have all of the last 4 years in front of me, that line item has decreased from, I believe the number was almost 200,000. What that is an ability to, if we had an inmate that we had to send somewhere else, and that, whether it was a county or whatever that other institution was, they charged us or billed us for that, that's where that would come from. Like I have mentioned before, fortunately, what we have is a good working relationship with counties around us, and we are able to do something called a warden's agreement. We do that for counties. They do that for us. So that item is something we haven't had to utilize, but we felt like we might want to leave a little in there just in case, especially with sometimes with these juveniles that we come into contact with.
Understood. Thank you. I'm glad I asked that question. I didn't realize it was so expensive and it's been going down that much.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? Oh, Ms. McDermott and then Ms. Krishnowski.
Can you mention the wages overtime strategic initiative
Yes.
saving $600,000? That's quite a bit. Can you explain that?
Sure, thank you. You know what? I was going to talk about that one too. It is quite a bit. So, one of the things that we looked at and have looked at over the last couple of years, obviously, overtime is a driving factor in corrections. There's a lot of reasons for that. Some unpredictability in what actually happens as far as scheduling goes, especially when we have outside hospitals and things, emergency transports, things of that nature, and obviously staffing fluctuates. But what we looked at, our administration took a hard look, and then in discussion with the county manager and discussion with the budget and finance committee, we are optimistic that we can, through some strategic movement, some changes, looking at some staffing analysis over this year coming into 25, that we can make some positive changes that can reduce that number. And again, one of our challenges here especially is we have an aging facility. I mean, we say it a lot, but it is the truth. The way it's designed is not as efficient as it could be, but it wasn't built in that aspect, right? So we are going to work hard. We're going to work diligent because we want to be good stewards of the taxpayer money, and we're going to do our best to be as efficient, as safe, and as effective as we can be as the Division of Corrections.
Thank you.
Ms. Krishnowski?
I was just curious when you mentioned about other counties. Do we get inmates from other counties here, and do we get them often?
We do get them fairly often. We work with Lackawanna County, we work with Monroe County, we work with
And
Carbon
what kind of
County.
revenue do we get from there?
We don't. That's what we have is a warden's agreement. Okay. So we will receive an inmate from them. If they're, usually what happens is there's a situation where maybe there's an inmate who had a conflict with a staff member, or that something of that nature that was going on, or there was a lawsuit filed. So that county will contact, their warden will contact me, vice versa, and we will ask, and it's basically, for lack of better words, a gentleman's agreement, so there is no revenue. Either way, we're not expending revenue, and they're not receiving any revenue.
And we only get inmates from those specific ones. We wouldn't get any from like Philadelphia County or anything like that.
Not necessarily, but it's something that if we had to, we would look at, because again, we need to move inmates sometimes as well. And so it's worked out. This is the way it's been since I've been there, and longer than that we've been able to have these relationships with other counties. So it does save us money. It does save us money. I believe, in my opinion, it saves us much more than we would generate if we were to put a number on, as some counties have, because I will tell you, I don't utilize those counties because I don't need to.
Any other questions? Mr. Haas?
Hey, Mr. Wilbur, boy, if you can get that overtime down, you'd be a legend here, because that's been an ongoing problem
It
here
has.
for a long time.
Yes, that's
So
correct.
Thank you for tackling that. Ready to hear how you're going to do that magic. But is the corrections department, are we doing any lateral moves, any physical moves, or anything that would take any restructuring or anything like that with your different buildings, or anything whatsoever? Any like hardware or?
Can you be a little more clear?
Sure.
On that?
Like we talked about how maybe you do intake with new clients, anything like that you're looking to change the structure of how the Department of Corrections does business. I don't know if that makes any sense.
It does make sense.
Yeah.
I think it was alluded to a little bit earlier by the manager.
Yeah.
We are looking at trying to I believe the engineer it's very early in the engineering. Looking at a potentially a wing, for lack of better words, that would be medical and substance use disorder. That's what we're looking at. Very, very early stages. Okay. But over this last year, as I mentioned before, the amount of outside officers that I've had to engage in hospital duties is something that I've never seen before, because the inmates are getting older and they're really not in good health. And so if there's a way that we could put that back inside the fences, that's what we're working on. We're trying to do that. Unfortunately, with the other areas, booking, if you mentioned booking, any of those other areas, we're have a very difficult ability to move things around, because we don't have enough space already as it is. So anything we move, we have to then make sure that something else goes in that place. So it's hard to innovate in that way, but we've innovated a lot of ways in regard to you know, what we're equipping our staff with and things of that nature to help with their duties.
So for anything like that, so it's more like a vision. It's not necessarily there's
allocations
in your budget to do something like that. We look at maybe like if we were going to go that route
Right,
with
no,
ARPA funds.
correct. There's
Okay.
the only one I believe there's one in the capital plan that has to do with upgrading security on the main gate.
Okay. All right. Very good. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other
Thank
questions?
you, Mr. Wilbur.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Last but not least, Division 13, Courts. Mr. Highmarsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Council. Happy to be here again. Paul Highmarsh, representing the courts, the magisterial district offices, probation and parole, and domestic relations services. If you would indulge me for a second, I'd like to introduce Lisa Parati, who's our director of domestic relations service. You know, these are the folks that run the day-to-day of our operations and do a fabulous job for us in the courts. And Kevin Perluke from Probation and Parole Services. You know, they don't get out and they don't get seen a lot, but I'd like to show them my appreciation, and I'm grateful to work with them. This budget process was difficult. We worked with the administration and Budget Finance Director Roselle and her staff to come up with what we believe will be a workable budget for 2025. I think in the scans that you got, the materials for tonight, things got a little mixed up, and our overall Division 13 pages, the first two pages kind of got pushed at the rear of the materials that were passed out tonight. But if I could hit you with the highlights, you could at least start there. On the revenue side, we've got two different areas when we were able to work with the Administrative Office of Pennsylvania Courts and be able to increase some security reimbursements that the county will now be eligible for. 4183, 460, 28. We'll have access to about $85,000 worth of security reimbursements that we can put into our magisterial district offices. If you skip down to 4184, 44510, we'll have approximately another 45,000 of additional security reimbursements from the Administrative Office of Pennsylvania Courts that we'll be able to use in the courthouse and the Berminski building. 4184, 460, 68. There was a slight increase in fees from our divorce master revenues, which represented about a 25% increase. Working with Director Roselle, we're now showing an increase in our highway safety monies that we're able to transfer over to the county to the tune of about $300,000. Also in probation and parole, 4237, 43531. There was a slight increase in some grant funding, bringing that from 25,000 to 40,000. The majority of our increases on the expense side were in the salary categories for both represented and non-represented individuals in the district courts. Represented about a 2.5% increase. In 4184, the courts, there was an increase of about 4% in the non-represented. And that was in part due to the addition of some staff that I'd like to point out. So in our diversionary programs, we needed to hire an additional case manager. And in our protection from abuse office in the court, we needed to hire another 2 individuals. I'm sorry to say that on the PFA perspective, we're listed, Luzerne County is listed in the top 10 across all counties in Pennsylvania, and I believe there was just an article in one of the local papers highlighting that. So we did need to add some additional staff there. Also on our diversionary program, which is starting to expand, working with other members, we needed to add another non-repped individual in that area. Perhaps the second largest increase that we seem to be incurring, and it's statutorily required, would be providing interpretive services. So we've seen a real increase in that area across multiple language platforms. And again, it's something we're statutorily required to provide equal access to everyone participating in judiciary services. The largest increase you'll see was in 4187, 53045, which is the domestic relations pension contribution. And that had actually not been budgeted under domestic relations. It was budgeted in another area. In working with Director Rozell's team, this would be the appropriate place under general accounting standards where it should be highlighted. So again, that was perhaps our largest, or was actually our largest increase.
Any questions?
Any questions?
Mr. Haas.
Hi, so, Mr. Highmarsh, good to see you. A couple questions. I'm seeing here, unfortunately, we have 400,000 in revenue. It looks like 800,000 increase in expenditures, unfortunately, but that, welcome to government, right?
$1,000 being the pension contribution.
Yeah, the pension. So that's, could we start there? The pension, how much was that amount in last year's budget? It doesn't matter where it was, but what is that?
Approximately the same amount, but it
Oh,
was
it just
coming
was.
out of domestic service,
Okay.
domestic relations services, and quite honestly, I can't remember. Director Rozell, do you recall where that was actually budgeted?
Yeah, it was coming out of the general fund, but we have the ability to take it out of domestic, so we want to take it out of there to create money in the general fund.
Absolutely. No, thanks, Ms. Rozell. I mean, and that's fine with me, just as long as it's not a significant increase over last year.
No, it wasn't a significant increase, it was just budgeted in
Yeah.
a different
Okay.
place, so
No,
it wasn't
very
shown
good.
on
How does this budget deal with the extra judge in the Court of Common
Well,
Pleas?
the extra judge won't be seated until January of
That's right. It's next year, isn't it? Right, the
Correct.
following year. That answers my question as well. Of course. Thank you.
But
So
it will
the
be something that the Bureau of Elections will be tackling in the
sure, that extra line,
in May.
extra line on the ballot. No, of course, that makes. Oh, I was thinking about that. Then I guess my last two. Then addition of positions, I'm looking at 4184.510.15. What positions?
So in
And what's
4184,
that?
it was two additional positions in the Protection from Abuse Office, as well as a guardianship administrator. And I believe one of those positions falls under our diversionary programs as well.
Thank you for that. And the last one is the interpreter services. I'm thinking, shouldn't that go down if we have more AI today? Don't we have technology to help out with those
Required by
interpreters?
statute to have
A physical person?
An in-person
Should ask you.
certified interpreter.
Okay.
The certification process that they need to go through at the administrative office level to become certified is very difficult and arduous process.
Okay.
So AOPC actually negotiates rates with certified interpreters from not only Pennsylvania but surrounding states. So on any given day, we may have interpreters driving in from New Jersey, Maryland, Philly. Yeah, it's a very expensive process, to which we get some reimbursement to offset that.
Okay, then so we don't have any training programs for local folks to be doing that? I'm sure we have bilingual people here.
We actually have one individual in our office that is currently going through the certification program. We have one staff person currently that is certified, that is a staff person here that helps with some of the costs, which is very rare to have a staff person certified. Second would be just an added bonus. We did have one for a while, but she had moved on to a federal position.
Well, thanks for your time, and I think I got to conclude like I do every time we go around this. We're grossly underfunded by the state, and I know we've got Representative-elect Walsh in the crowd. Hopefully, you can bring us back some of that extra funding, sir. Yeah, add it to your list. But we talk about this every year. You know, we feed Harrisburg. Our fees, they go down there, but we get a portion back, and it's just inherently unfair, and there's Supreme Court cases about this. So I think it's time for Harrisburg to really, at long last, help us out. But thank you, sir.
I would like to give a thanks to Mr. Wilbur as well. His staff is always accommodating. We try to do what we can by video, and given some space issues within the facility, he's always amenable in trying to find us a location where we can set up some video services so we don't need to transport. So I'd like to thank him and the administration as well.
Well, thank you, sir, for
No problem.
Thank
If
you,
have any
man.
questions,
Thank you.
feel free to
Any
let
other
me know.
questions from council members? All right, hearing none. Is there public comment? Mr. Griffith, you have public comment checked, or you? Okay.
Real quick, I just want to, first of all, I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. But next week is going to be the tree lighting ceremony. I know the administration did a great job of decorating the trees we saw on the way in. And they're going to have some fabulous programming next week with some kids coming in, doing some singing, and of course Santa's going to be here. So we just definitely want to make sure that we get people, and of course the county controller is going to sing again. But we want to make sure that we
Excellent.
get people to come out to that whole Christmas tree lighting thing. It's going to be a great event for the county. And
That's Monday at 6 p.m. or 5 p.m., right?
yeah, it starts Monday at 5 p.m. tree lighting.
Mm-hmm.
Should be a great event. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Griffith. Anybody else in the audience? Public comment? We have two hands up. Mr. Raybo?
Mr. Chair, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Mark Rabo of Hazelton speaking. With respect to the discussion on the inquiry committee, I would just like to agree with the vice chair and what he said about the outside forces. I would add to that not only the outside forces, but those enablers and apologists who aided and abetted those extremists on the outside that are the main problem. Because I say this because as someone who tracked this year's election in real time with respect to the voter registration voter registration fraudulent form dumping that took place starting in Lancaster County, and they did a fantastic job in picking up on that fraudulent form dumping that took place, and then York County and Monroe County, I believe 2 other counties followed that found fraudulent voter registration forms. So to say that there was no tampering or attempted interference in the 2024 election is, if somebody says that, they're not paying attention to the big picture. As well as you have, and to give an example, Mr. Chair, of the attempted tampering and also the enabling of these outside forces, you have a commissioner, a county commissioner in Bucks County who thumbed her nose at not 1, but 2 Supreme Court rulings, and at the objection of their chief county solicitor, who said, hey, the laws don't matter and the Supreme Court rulings don't matter. Well, you know what, Mr. Chair, I'm glad you didn't partake in that, or the Luzerne County didn't partake in that, because she should be brought up on misconduct charges and brought up on an impeachment inquiry of the House and obviously of the state Senate to follow with a removal hearing. This is disgusting. And then you have the absurd and egregious double standard that our county manager was threatened with criminal charges that didn't exist with the drop boxes, and you don't hear a word from our lame duck attorney general in terms of that Bucks County commissioner. I find that startling and baffling, Mr. Chair. I don't know about you and the rest of the council, but I think that is scurrilous, to say the least. So I just don't understand, Mr. Chairman, why this county does not hold their Harrisburg's feet to the fire when it comes to this egregious double standard that took place before the election and after the election. I think that needs to be brought up.
Thank you, Mr. Rabo.
Into the open. Thank you.
Thank you.
And happy Thanksgiving.
Same to you. Mr. Knapp?
Thank you, Chair Lombardo, Vice Chair Thornton, and all council members. I wanted to raise the question with this debacle with the misprint in the 119th. As far as the contract is concerned with the printing of that, isn't there a clause or something that says that they could be held liable for causing such a debacle in the election process as it had? And if there isn't a clause that says that the supplier, a printer of the misprint, as they did, they owned up to it, with how much chaos it caused, should there be in the contract a liability for what they caused? I mean, most of the election issues, or I would say, the 119th and the misprint and the doubling up on mail-ins, they weren't, the voters weren't sure of what was going to be sent in, or they sent the wrong one in. I was in some of the adjudication processes. We should hold the vendor responsible. And this is my viewpoint on this, because it really put everything into a frenzy when we all knew it was going to be the turnout of a century for the election process that day. So I think legal standards have to be put in place with regards to the vendor. Even if the office of law would pose a threat of suit for what transpired. This is my opinion. By the way, happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving to you as well. Any other public comment? Miss Williams?
Good evening. I was listening to Mr. Haas's election inquiry recommendation, and I think it would be a good idea. I'm not sure how the internal investigation is going to work for the Bureau, if that's just going to be, excuse me, if that's just going to be the Bureau employees. But I personally have made a list of a lot of what we experienced post-election and prior to the election as well, that I think would shed some light on recommendations for improvement, an evaluation, some pros and cons, some suggestions. And I'd like to have the opportunity to share them, but I don't know if that's something that I would get to do with the internal investigation. So if I, as a board member, am not part of that internal investigation, I would hope then that I would be able to maybe be a part of the election inquiry investigation and be able to share some of my own thoughts and input. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Anybody else for public comment? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion. Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.